What's up again, everybody? Well, we had an absolute bombshell of a spoiler dropped on us today, courtesy of Dragon Shield, which is a supporter of the channel, by the way. I don't know if you knew this, but Dragon Shield, a supporter of this YouTube channel, so thank you, Dragon Shield, and also great spoiler card. It's pretty cool. So I figured we'd talk about that spoiler card, and while we were at it, we might as well just talk about all of the spoiler cards we have up until this point as we prepare for spoiler season for Outsiders in like less than 12 days. I don't know. I need to start really kind of digging in. I started on my own spoiler video, which is coming out on the 5th of March. So mark your calendars because I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty good card. So first of all, we got to shout out Fabrary because Fabrary took the time to put all of the spoilers and make this video possible by courtesy of just including them all in a spoiler section, which you can also go through and see all the schedule of spoilers and events. Look, this is the day that I'm spoiling a card. Look, they even have, I think, kind of my time frame. I think I'm going for like the 9 a.m. Central Time, but that's pretty cool. How cool is that? And these are the revealed cards. We're starting with the absolute bombshell, which was Dishonor. This card is crazy cool. It is a Majestic from the upcoming Outsiders set. It is a 3 pitch, so it's a blue pitch, 0 cost attack action card that attacks for 2, and it says combo. If Bonds of Ancestry was the last attack this combat chain, this has +2. So otherwise it's a 2 attack, which is great if you're playing as Benji, because technically this card is unblockable if you're playing as Benji with cards from hand. But as a 2 attack like this, it's pretty innocuous in Katsu. So interesting little kind of balancing act there. But if you do manage the combo side of things, it becomes a nice little 4 attack, hitting a breakpoint. And then regardless of if you can, combo this off, this says when this hits a hero, if you control Surging Strike, Descending Gustwave, and Bonds of Ancestry, that hero loses all abilities for the rest of the game. All hero abilities for the rest of the game. So if you just rifle down the list of heroes that this utterly destroys if it connects, you're left with most heroes. Most heroes are utterly destroyed by this card, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Even some of the living legend heroes, like just picture this. If you hit this onto Prism, or if you hit this onto Chain, Chain obviously slows down, but it's not nearly as detrimental. They immediately lose their kind of like capabilities in a lot of different ways. If you hit this onto Starvo, that's a card that existed back in the day. Yeah, it would be a fair fight all of a sudden. But like the heroes that are still around, if you think about the heroes that are still around, this connects with a lot of them. It takes away Reinar's Intimidate ability. It takes away Bravo's Dominate ability. It takes away Oldham's defensive ability. It takes away Levia's ability to turn off Blood Debt and not die. It turns off the ability to create Ash for Dromai and also give Go-Agains to dragons. It turns off Dorinthia's ability to swing twice. It basically means that you can't give Go-Again to any of your buffed up attacks as Bolton, which is disgusting. What else does it hit? It turns off your ability to make Rune Chance with Viscerai. I know there's like a cornucopia of things that this affects. Now, the downside to this card is that you have to string together a lot to actually make that connect. Now, first of all, just getting the Bonds of Ancestry combo line to trigger, that's no big deal. But this effect right here that we want to kind of trigger off, we want to fire off, is the tricky one. So if you're playing as Katsu, you can start with Surging Strike, and then on the hit, you can go and discard a card from hand for 0 cost, and then find Descending Gustwave, at which point you can then go ahead and crack the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to go get Bonds of Ancestry, and then play Dishonor, which you are holding in hand. And you can do that in any real combination, as long as you have Surging Strike, and then get the Katsu trigger at any point, and then, go and fetch the other pieces. But you could also just natural draw into 2 of these pieces, and then kind of fit the other pieces together. Now, in order for Benji to pull this off, that's going to be a little trickier because he doesn't have the latent ability to go and fetch, as Benji just can't, go and tutor things out like you can do with Katsu, of course, because you have the ability to discard. So this card is really cool, and it's also really well balanced in that respect. You have to do a lot to make this thing go off. Now, Talking about Bonds of Ancestry is a really interesting thing because this was spoiled a couple of weeks back over at the Calling, I believe Calling Indie. This is the card that it's referencing, and this is expensive. It's a 2 cost that says combo. If a card with Gust Wave in its name was the last attack this combat chain, this costs 2 less to play and has Go Again. And it says when this attacks, you can banish a card with combo from your graveyard. If you do, search your deck for a card with the same name, banish it. And I know you're falling asleep. I'm so sorry. Then shuffle. You can play at this combat chain. Basically, you want to trigger the combo on this because then it just goes and gets dishonor, which is kind of crazy because Bonds of Ancestry allows you, if you've already gotten a dishonor in the graveyard, to banish the first dishonor that you have in your graveyard, go and find one from the deck, and then run that one out there. It's pretty nutty. It's pretty gross. It's kind of cool. This is a really interesting card too, and it's well balanced because it's a 2 for 4. This is a rare, so we can assume that it's a cycle, which means that the yellow is going to be a 2 for 3 and then a 2 for 2. And it's expensive for this rate, but you're getting the value off of the combo, which again, when we're drafting this set, you're looking at picking up Benji cards, you're looking at picking up Katsu cards, and you're trying to decide which functions better for each hero. And Bonds of Ancestry probably functions better in Katsu than it does in Benji, unless you're running the 2 for 2, which is really interesting because the blue is technically a 2. In this cycle. So let's talk about some other interesting cards. Let's go through the Blood Rots and the Frailties and the Inertias. So there are these suite of cards. If you haven't seen them, they are all Spike with Blood Rot, Spike with Frailty, and Spike with Inertia. They are all assassin attack reactions, and each of them are targeting a stealth card. So an attack action card with stealth. They will all gain +3. They will all give +3, I should say. And they will create their respective tokens. So let's go ahead and look at the tokens, which I think are kind of scattered around. No, they're probably at the bottom. They are at the bottom. So spiking with Blood Rot up here gives you the Blood Rot Pox token, which says at the beginning of your end phase, destroy 2 Blood Rot Pox, then it deals 2 damage, unless your opponent pays 3. So it's almost like taking a Frost Hex and beefing it up a little bit more. But it doesn't stick around permanently. It's just gone after the 1. But that's really cool. I think this is a really, really interesting and powerful effect. Frailty, on the other hand, your attack action cards played from Arsenal and your weapon attacks have -1. You give this to your opponents, and then everything that they do, if it's from Arsenal or a weapon attack, is a -1 penalty for the turn. And this destroys itself at the end of their turn, kind of like a Frostbite does. So in a way, instead of taxing your opponent's resources like a Frostbite, this basically nerfs all of their attacks. So if you're playing against a ninja and you land a Frailty token on them, you're feeling very good because it's going to stop both of their small weapon attacks, assuming that we have Kodachis. And it's also going to stop, some damage from their arsenal. It doesn't nerf them completely, which is why it's looking like this is a pretty nice little balanced token. And then finally, the Inertia token says at the beginning of your end phase, destroy this, put all the cards from your hand and arsenal on the bottom of your deck. And this one might just straight up be my favorite because it's like Seek and Destroy in a way. The Ranger card Seek and Destroy that basically like nuked your opponent's hand and arsenal, and they didn't get to keep anything from their hand and their arsenal. Instead, this just kind of does the exact same thing on a token aura, and you can essentially just buff up any of your attacks with Spike with Inertia, and you guarantee that your opponent is not setting an arsenal, they are not keeping defensive cards, and they're having to change their game plan on the fly, which I think is super cool. Super cool. We also saw Barbed Castaway. I talked about this in a previous video. Don't sleep on this card. There are some interesting interactions and things that you're going to be able to do with Barbed Castaway. It has the once per turn instant, pay 1, put an arrow card from your hand face up into your arsenal, which is great. You can also do the bottom one, which is once per turn instant, pay 1. You can turn a face down arrow in your arsenal face up and then put an aim counter on it. You can do both. You can do the bottom one first, and if you're playing New Horizon, then you can arsenal the second card from your hand, paying an extra 1, and you have 2 cards in your arsenal, and you have like a 6-card hand. You know, you do something like that, which is really cool. You also just basically have the capability of, starting the entire game off with a 6-card hand, plus an aim counter on one of your cards if you want to. Even just past that, there's some other really interesting things that this card provides. It's just going to be interesting to see if there's like a majestic bow that you can kind of access with Riptide and whatever Riptide does, and Azalea, if they have access to, you know, a second bow, or maybe there's multiple weapons in this set. We've only ever seen this one. So it could be like there's multiple common token weapons because we have multiple heroes. That would be really interesting, actually. Death Touch, we've talked about a little bit, is a 1-for-6 that is absolutely nutty, but you can play it only from the arsenal. You can't play it from your hand. You have to get it into arsenal first, and this is not something you can set with Barbed Castaway, but it's going to be a really good card if you can get it to hit, because it will create one of these tokens that we've talked about previous, and it's also just straight up a 1-for-6. It's like super well statted, super well statted. Codex of Frailty we talked about a while ago, but this is a really spicy one because this is a hybrid card. Hybrid cards are cool, man. This one allows you to, each hero, put an attack action card from their graveyard face down into their arsenal, which is great if you're playing in like PvE or Ultimate Pit Fight. Each hero that does that, though, discards a card, so you kind of have to decide what you're doing, which is interesting. You're kind of like balancing whether or not you want to discard a card in favor of arsenaling a card. Kind of fun. Nevertheless, you do create a Ponder token under your control and a Frailty under everybody else's. So a Ponder token, I don't believe is shown right here because it was in our previous set, but a Ponder token essentially just allows you to draw a card at the end of your turn before arsenaling. So you basically gain the card back from the effect on Codex of Frailty, while everybody else has to choose whether or not they want to arsenal from their graveyard, or you know, lose a card from hand, basically. Peace of Mind, this is one we haven't talked about because this was spoiled by the fine folks over at Team Covenant, and it says Peace of Mind costs 2. It's a generic instant, and it makes me sad. It makes me sad if I'm playing anything but Wizard, because this is like the Oasis Respite of you know, the Wizard class, except it's for everybody else besides Wizard. The next time you would be dealt attack damage this turn, prevent 4 of that damage, and then create a Ponder token. So this is a card that you have to pitch to play. It does stop some amount of damage, which is really good in this set because it looks like all of these heroes are going to be pushing breakpoints in some way, shape, or form. And it gives you a card back in return thanks to the Ponder token. So that's a really interesting design overall, a really nice little trade-off as well. By basically pitching and playing this, you're down 2 cards, but this replaces itself in a way, so you're kind of just netting the card that you pitched, which is an interesting way to think about it. You are kind of going deeper into your deck as well with this card, and you're preventing damage. This is going to be a good card in Draft, I think. Going to be a good card in Sealed as well. Quivers. I don't know. Instant, pay 3, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an arrow, put it face up into your arsenal and destroy Quiver of Rustling Leaves. It's interesting because, like, you technically don't have to resolve this correctly, because if you reveal the top card of your deck and it's not an arrow, then you just kind of look at what's on the top of your deck in a way, which is kind of cool. If it is an arrow, then you gain a card by pitching a card, which could fix your hand if you don't have an arrow that you're able to kind of access. If you have extra resources at the end of a long string of turn, or like a long string on your turn, I should say, a combat chain, if you will, then essentially you can just go a little further because you had the extra resources by doing this effect. And that's really interesting. That's really cool. If you run out of reload mechanics, or essentially ways to put cards into your arsenal and fire them off, this is another way. So there's a lot of people that were like, oh, this is not as good, and I'm not so sure that it's not good. Wait, that's weird. That's a weird way to say that. I'm pretty sure it is good. We're going to put it that way. And it's literally just a free equipment slot that doesn't exist anywhere else. So keep that in mind as well. Let's talk about Riptide. He has access to this sweet card, Collapsing Trap. This card's really good. Other traps to this point, not really good. This card, incredible, because when this defends an attack with Go Again, including weapon attacks, the attacking hero discards their hand and draws that many cards -1. Essentially, this basically just nukes their turn from what they were planning on doing, takes a card out of their hand in addition to the card that they've already played and attacked with, or pitched to attack with a weapon with, and it just makes you say, okay, now what are you going to do? And their entire turn collapses like the people on that bridge, which is interesting, right? That's a really cool art as well. This card's really good. That card's really good. What haven't we talked about? Oh, we didn't go over these cards. These are the last cards that we haven't really talked about. That looks so horribly painful. Infect is a stealth attack. This is essentially just a keyword that does nothing and is referenced by other cards. And so we kind of see that with, for example, Spike with Blood Rot. This can only be applied to cards with stealth. So we can assume there's going to be a lot of cards with stealth, or they're going to be fairly impactful. And this is a 0 for 3 that is basically asking for a card because this says when this hits a hero, create a Blood Rot Pox token under their control. And yes, you can just throw like Frailty on top of it. So if they just don't respect this and they let it hit, well, they're getting 2 of these tokens, and that could spell disaster for them. We have Sedate, which does the same thing, except it creates an Inertia token. It's a 0 for 3 as well. Then we have Wither, and these are very generic, very kind of vanilla baseline cards for us to kind of whet our appetite with, if you will, because this one creates a Frailty token as well. And finally, the card that started it all, Razor's Edge. This was the first card ever spoiled for this set. And Razor's Edge costs nothing. It's a target attack action card with stealth gains +3. It is an assassin attack reaction. Just a nice little vanilla +3. It's an Iron Song response, except you just got to play it on stealth instead of expecting your opponent to block with card from hand. So those are every card that I believe has been spoiled up until this point. Again, courtesy of Fabrary. So thank you, Fabrary. Also, I should say huge thank you to everyone who's a patron supporting this channel. All those people, absolute legends. And another great legend is MinMax Games, sponsor of the channel. They sponsor literally every video that we put out. So if you want to support them, a great LGS that does so much for Fab, check my links down in the description. Head on over there, buy some stuff from them. They're absolutely fantastic people. I'm not kidding. They really are. Ask them yourselves. If you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed walking through all the spoilers, let me know what your favorite spoiler is so far in a comment below, and tell me why your favorite spoiler just so happens to be the one that was spoiled today, Dishonor. If it's not Dishonor, tell me that in a comment below as well, and then make the number climb up. As always, thanks for watching.